Hey everyone, Lanie here. I want to give you a heads up that today's episode is going to be a bit of a break from our usual format. Every now and then I like to take a step back and approach a case differently, like no scripted storytelling, just talk through a case that's just been sitting with me off the cuff, raw, and in my own word. Now, if you're listening on Spotify, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this more conversational style. So drop me a rating, leave a comment in the Q&A section. And if you're tuning in from YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps more people find the show and it keeps these deep dives going. Today, we're going to be diving into a case that didn't get the same media attention as some others, but it absolutely should have. It's a story of obsession, manipulation, and ultimately murder. And it all centers around a woman named Lisa Boldridge, who went to chilling lengths to remove her ex-husband from the picture entirely. Okay, on to the show. I need my friends who are currently watching to hear me out. My space is a mess, but I'm also reading off my phone because I have like an outline prepared. And yeah, I don't have fancy equipment. Okay. I'm kind of just going along for the ride. So hopefully you'll stick along for the ride and enjoy it. And if you don't tell me about it. Just walk away. It's fine. So let me give you a little bit of a backstory into this case. Lisa and Kurt Boldridge were married in 1985 and had a son together. But like many relationships, theirs was turbulent and they ended up divorcing in 1991. A few years later, Kurt found love again with a woman named Sandy White, someone who brought calm to the chaos that Lisa had left behind. Sandy wasn't just a wife to Kurt. She was also the mother of a child named Matt, whose father, Kirk Wilson, would later be manipulated by Lisa into committing Kurt's murder. That connection, though perhaps incidental at first, would later become a key part of the murder plot. Those who knew Sandy described her as nurturing, private, and deeply devoted to her family. She worked hard to provide stability, not just for her son Matt, but also for Kurt and Lisa's son. Friends of the couple said that Sandy and Kurt shared a quiet affection, the kind that was built on mutual respect and healing. They enjoyed family dinners, weekend outings, and a shared desire to move on from the chaos of the past. Together, they had built something solid and something that was worth protecting. Unfortunately, Lisa's presence made that peace difficult to maintain. She remained a constant, sometimes disruptive force in Kurt's life. There were troubling signs like acts of violence and anger that pointed to a dangerous obsession. Lisa would show up uninvited, reportedly smashing out the windows of Kurt's truck and slashing his tires. In one instance, a neighbor recalled seeing Lisa yelling at Kurt in his driveway late at night, hurling objects at the house. These weren't isolated events. They were part of a long pattern of escalating behavior. She left threatening voicemails and was said to have shown up at Kurt's workplace on more than one occasion, demanding to see him. Friends later described Lisa's fixation as relentless. But Lisa never seemed to fully let go. She remained a constant, disruptive presence in Kurt's life. There were troubling signs, again, those acts of violence and anger that pointed to a dangerous obsession. By the time Lisa was convicted of arson in 1995, the tension between her and Kurt had already been simmering for years. Friends and neighbors described a relentless campaign of harassment. Lisa would drive by Kurt's house repeatedly, sometimes parking nearby and just watching him. She made threatening calls, spread rumors in the community, and lashed out in fits of rage when things didn't go her way. That all escalated dramatically in August and again in September 1995 when Lisa set fire to Kurt's home. Not once, but twice. Both incidents were clearly intentional. Investigators later revealed that accelerants had been used and the fires were set in a way that showed a knowledge of the home's layout. She was convicted and sentenced to 46 months in prison, but even prison time didn't seem to extinguish the bitterness that she harbored. Those close to Kurt said he lived in a near constant state of vigilance, knowing Lisa's anger hadn't gone away. It had just gone underground. A disturbing recording surfaced later, Lisa telling Kurt, quote, "You got your hands full with me now." In other recorded conversations, Lisa made veiled threats about Kurt's future, alluding to how she always finds a way and cryptically saying that people like him get what's coming. Psychologically, these statements suggest a combination of narcissistic entitlement and fixation on control. And as you know, if you were a Crimes of Passion listener, I always give the disclaimer that I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, but I have done some research, and that's what I could find in my research. If you disagree with that, cool. Thank you for sharing, right? Experts have noticed that such patterns, threats disguised as warnings, are common in coercive and controlling individuals who view themselves as victims of injustice and justify retaliatory behavior as a form of balance or retribution. For many, it was more than just a threat. It was a chilling insight into her mindset, one that signaled what was coming. The buildup had been years in the making, marked by escalating harassment, destruction of property, and carefully veiled threats, but this was the final foreshadowing, a prelude to something far more permanent. And within months of her release from prison, Lisa would set into motion a plan that would end in bloodshed. Now, on March 24th, 2000, Kurt had planned a fishing trip with a friend, but he never showed up. That friend tried calling him several times, and when he didn't answer, they contacted Kurt's mother out of concern. She, too, had been unable to reach him. Worried, she ends up calling the authorities to perform a welfare check. When deputies arrived, they found the home locked from the inside. Nothing appeared out of place until they approached the bedroom. The smell when they approached the bedroom door had hit them almost instantaneously. They opened the door and they look inside, and what they found inside would unravel a murder plot that had been quietly brewing behind the scenes. As for Lisa, how would she know that Sandy and their son were away? This detail would later become one of the most chilling details in the case. Prosecutors believe that Lisa had been closely watching Kurt, monitoring his routines and movements. Some evidence even suggested that she may have spoken with or surveilled others close to him. So this wasn't random. Lisa knew he would be alone. Investigators estimated that Kurt had likely been killed 1 to 2 days before he was discovered, meaning he was shot sometime between the late evening of March 22nd and early March 23rd. The fact that his body wasn't found until March 24th meant that he had been lying there undisturbed, giving the killer ample time to leave the scene without a trace. Now, this delay not only complicated the investigation, it reinforced the reality that whoever had killed Kurt had planned this around him being isolated and alone at their home, almost down to the hour. Kurt's body was found under a comforter, shot in the left temple at close range. There was no sign of forced entry, no struggle. Whoever killed him had access, and they knew exactly what they were doing. His wife, Sandy, like I said earlier, had taken their son on a short trip out of town to visit her parents, which Kurt was like, please go. He wanted to have some quiet time before his planned fishing trip. Now, the timing, again, was perfect. Whoever plotted the murder knew that Sandy was going to be gone and that Kurt would be alone. Authorities quickly zero in on Lisa as the likely perpetrator of this crime. To nobody's surprise, I hope. I hope they weren't like, oh gosh, I wonder who could. For sure, Lisa. She had already tried to kill him twice already. Now, at the time of the murder, she ends up checking herself into a hospital for stress-related symptoms. Yeah, I'm sure it's stressful after you kill somebody. That's just me. And it was there that a nurse ended up overhearing her speaking in detail about the murder. And she was giving details that nobody, unless, they were there committing the murder, would know about. So she ended up speaking about the details, how he was found, etc. So she was giving off details, like specifics about how Kurt was found, that they used a comforter to cover his body, that there was a lack of forced entry. And these were all details, again, only the killer or someone closely connected to the killer could have known. And it sent chills through the nurse who overheard this. But what made it even more disturbing was Lisa's completely detached tone. She wasn't emotional. She wasn't shaken. She was calm, almost clinical. and how she was like recounting what was going on. But according to those who overheard the conversation, she sounded like someone who was just reciting facts, like the sky is blue, there's a calendar on my wall, I haven't had my 90 ounces of water, things like that. She wasn't mourning a loss, right? So this wasn't someone who was sitting around struggling with grief. This was someone who had already emotionally processed the outcome because she orchestrated it. Investigators immediately noted how unnatural and inappropriate the timing and content of her statements were. This kind of behavior, especially so soon after a murder, raised serious red flags. It signaled something to criminal psychologists. It signaled something deeper: the behavior of someone with a lack of empathy and a high need for control, traits often seen in individuals who commit crimes of manipulation rather than impulse. This wasn't a moment of grief-stricken rambling. This was calculated. Lisa knew things she shouldn't, and she wasn't afraid to reveal them. And it was the first real crack in the facade, and it was damning. Even more disturbing, and I also think too, before we get back into the story, this is kind of like a bravado thing. Like, yeah, this is what I did. I think it was more of a boastful thing as well. Like, she already did 46 months in prison for arson. I don't think that she had any type of care in the world about going to prison, because for her, I think truly, like, again, the control situation, she got what she wanted. She got full control over him, and she won in this instance. But one of the more disturbing facts that came out about this was that Lisa had called the Social Security Administration just a week before Kurt's death, wondering how her son would qualify for survivor benefits. And that part, definitely damning. The timing and context pointed to premeditation, so this wasn't a crime of passion, no pun intended. This was calculated. From a psychological perspective, this behavior indicates a disturbing level of foresight and emotional detachment. Lisa wasn't grieving, she was planning. She was checking boxes to ensure the financial payoff was in place before Kurt was even dead. And it's the kind of clinical decision-making that is often associated with financial motivated killers, individuals who depersonalize their victims and rationalize murder as a means to an end. So police began building a profile, one that no longer sees Lisa simply as this volatile or emotionally unstable person, but as someone who's fully capable of orchestrating a murder. And it didn't take long to uncover that she did not act alone. Because again, this is not something, I think she needs people to do stuff for her. Like, she has to have somebody helping her. So Lisa Boldridge orchestrates the murder. That much is very clear. The man who ends up pulling the trigger for her is a man named Kurt Wilson, a name that, again, might sound familiar. He was the biological father of Matt, Sandy White's son. Yes, the same Sandy who had brought peace and stability into Kurt's life. Tangled connection gave Lisa a potent psychological weapon. She manipulated Kurt by feeding him a series of false and incendiary claims, most notably that Kurt had molested Matt. While there's no clear evidence that Lisa and Kurt were romantically involved, they were known to be close. I mean, there's nothing that will bring you closer than hating your ex-spouses, I can assume. And Lisa leveraged that trust to sway him. She cast Kurt not just as an enemy, but as a threat to Kurt's own son. Fueled by rage and a desire to protect his son, Kurt believed her, and that belief would set a deadly plan in motion. Now, I can't remember if he ever confronted him, but I think he was like, I don't care to confront him. He's got to go. I got to save my son. And we don't support vigilante justice, right? But I totally understand the mindset, especially as a parent now, where you're like, yeah, I would definitely kill for my child. For sure would. Cross borders, kill for my child. I would do it. I would do anything for my kid. But not cover up their crime. I would allow them to be held responsible for that. Now, Lisa handed Kurt a shotgun. She provided him the ammunition, and she gave him the key to Kurt's home. And so she didn't just plant this idea and say, hopefully it works out. She completely laid the bricks out on this path. They had another man named John Goodpasture who was also pulled into this plot. He drove Kurt to the scene and helped dispose of the murder weapon in the Missouri River. By the way, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier. This is all taking place in Atchison, Kansas. It's probably, I don't know, for Atchison, they get a lot of action. haunted action and then criminal action. It's very sad. Lisa's role was methodical. She made sure that the weapon was supplied, ensured access to the home, and planted the emotional fuse in Kirk Wilson. In every way that mattered, this was her crime. Once investigators had the full picture, charges began to roll out. Kirk Wilson, the man who pulled the trigger, was arrested and charged with first-degree murder. His trial began in early 2001, and again, the evidence was damning. Testimony from co-conspirators, Lisa's manipulation, and the weapon disposal plan. In June 2001, Kirk was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 25 years. That sentence was later reduced, and Kirk was paroled in 2019. Next was Gary Skeen. He was another figure tied to the plot. Gary wasn't at the crime scene, but he was involved in the planning phase. He took a plea deal for his role in the conspiracy and served 14 years in prison. Then back to John Goodpasture. He was a getaway driver and a key witness. So he agreed to testify in exchange for leniency. His cooperation helped prosecutors make their case against both Kirk and Lisa. So he ended up getting probation. And finally, Lisa Boldridge, the woman at the center of it all. She was charged with first-degree murder under a theory of aiding and abetting. Even though she didn't pull the trigger, prosecutors argued successfully that she had orchestrated every part of the murder. In a bench trial, she was found guilty and sentenced to life in prison, plus 50 years. That sentence was later reduced in 2005 to 25 years to life, which makes her eligible for parole this year, 2025. Now, each conviction told a part of the story, and together they painted a very clear picture. This was not a spontaneous act. It was cold. It was calculated, and it was just like this conspiracy rooted in manipulation, weaponized relationships, and a single-minded pursuit of control. Lisa appealed her conviction, arguing that her counsel was ineffective. The court had admitted improper hearsay, but the Kansas Supreme Court was like, nah, girl. Go back to your cell, you're staying in jail. So they upheld her conviction. Her legal team couldn't shake the overwhelming evidence, the premeditation, the manipulation, and the orchestration of every single detail leading up to Kurt's murder. She's a type A. Of course, she was like, no, this is exactly how you're going to walk in. I mean, hello. So why do you think Lisa did it? Now, prosecutors argued that this was just really about money, specifically the Social Security death benefit her son would receive if Kurt did pass away. But to me, it wasn't just about money. It really was about control. Like I said earlier, Lisa had lost control of Kurt's life, a life that she believed belonged to her for some reason. I never understand these narcissistic people, so I don't get that type of mindset. But she basically was trying to get all of this control. And this is how she took that control back, by ending Kurt's life, to say, like, truly, if I can't have you, nobody can have you. But it wasn't about having him. It was just exerting the control. She could care less. And it could have been anybody. I think it could have been any romantic partner of hers. It didn't have to be Kurt, but it ended up being Kurt, unfortunately, because they had the most history together. So to me, this case is all about kind of those tragic reminders, right, of how dangerous manipulation can be, because Lisa didn't pull the trigger. She's like Charles Manson. She's like Jim Jones. She made sure that someone else did it at her behest. She created the lie, she fed the rage, and she opened the door. And now with parole just around the corner, this question becomes, has justice truly been served? I do not think that she will get any time in prison or any parole for this whatsoever. I think that she will remain in prison for the duration of her life. She is a dangerous individual. She is not somebody who should be released, because she was in jail for 46 months and learned nothing. All she did was stew and seed. And you may think like, oh, her target's gone, so like she'll be fine. Kurt's been eliminated. There's no issue here. But she will find a new target. She is a person who should not be walking the streets free, able to harm somebody else. She may turn that on her son, on Sally, whoever. Like this, it just keeps going. And I think other people will see that she is a danger to society, which is why she won't get parole. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you like this type of format, feel free to let me know in the comments. So thank you for joining me on this week's episode of True Crime Cases with Lanie. Let me know what you think. Do you think that Lisa is going to end up getting parole? Do you think she deserves a second chance? Is there a second chance for somebody like Lisa? Who knows? Don't forget to follow the show, leave a review, share your thoughts with me on social media. And until next time, thank you for joining me on this episode as we file away another true crime case.